answers have been apparent to us in polling for 2 decades, that the great majority of people in South Africa are really kind of good, decent, trying to hold it together despite everything. And there isn't a market for that radical populism, despite the best efforts of radicals to the left and the right.
What strategic game will the EFF be playing in 2022? This was a question that we at the Centre for Risk Analysis considered in a webinar hosted towards the end of last year, exclusively for CRA clients. What follows is a short extract from this webinar. Enjoy. The key question that I have, and I'm sure many of our clients have it as well, is how is the ANC-EFF relationship going to play out? Because if you aggregate their results for the recent elections, 56%, 10% for the EFF, plus about 46% for the ANC. If you had to extrapolate that to the national elections in 2024, then there could be enough there for a majority. But we advised recently that it's not necessarily a fait accompli that the EFF would go in together with the ANC. It might see itself as more powerful, withholding its support. What do you think of that, Frans?
Yeah, it's one of those South African cliches. It's the same as the idea that when we said the ANC would lose, clients said, well, who will beat it? And we said, well, we don't think anyone will. It'll just sort of be brought down as it now has. And following on from that very often was the fear that, oh, well, if that happens, it's the ANC and the EFF together. Now, that's perfectly possible. It could happen. They come from the same place, have broadly similar policy offerings, are both parties mired in corruption and the like. However, if you are an ANC strategist, the morning after at a national level, your support has fallen to below 50%, and your Mr. Ramaphosa is gone. There's someone new in charge. You don't have a majority. You're still very powerful and very influential. You still got a lot of support. Is your first order of business going to be to invite in some of the most capable, just from a political perspective, strategists the country's ever seen in the EFF? And because if you do, they're going to eat you for breakfast. They're going to put you on trial for corruption, probably you yourself, to show the public how serious they are about such things. These guys are very good at what they do.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
From the EFF perspective, maybe when Cyril Ramaphosa banished Mr. Malema, so it was he who chaired the committee that threw Mr. Malema out of the ANC. When Mr. Malema looks at the state of the ANC, it can't pay the salaries. Support in urban areas, as low as I've told you it is, lost its majority. It's all around a bit of a shambles. Are you going to take your brand in the EFF and bolt it on, weld it on to that? Because what you're doing in political terms is you're doing the sort of term used in the investment world, but catching a falling knife. And if you bolt yourself onto the ANC, the forces that are dragging the ANC down will attach themselves to you and drag you down as well. So it's not at all assured that this is going to be the deal in the end, unless I think the EFF chaps are pretty certain that they can take over the ANC infrastructure and try and run the whole country, which was their long-term idea. But you saw this time round what happened loosely behind the scenes is the ANC tried to make a deal with everyone except the EFF because of these reasons. And the EFF's busy making deals with everyone except the ANC for the same reason. So the cliche hasn't carried through this time, and it could change, but the likelihood is, the probability, the leaning is, if you ask me where the leaning is, probably not the most probable evolution of our country's political future. David.
Yeah, so Frans, over the last few years in our scenario sets that we've presented to countless clients across the country, we've often, one of those scenarios has been a kind of a messy, unstable coalition. So it's not to say that that will be an orderly, linear kind of process. That is the kind of painful realignment that is likely to happen as part of the changing politics in the country. I wanted to just return to this topic of the EFF because we did have a couple of questions which I passed over earlier. So Rick said, it has always seemed likely to me that the EFF will barter its 10% for re-entry into the ANC to achieve a slender majority in the election. He's referring, I assume, there to 2024. And then Anthony also says, EFF leverage would be huge in that situation. It can only be done once, of course, but it is the only route to real power for them. I guess the question that I would ask of Anthony's comment is, perhaps the EFF might see that prize as a somewhat smaller one, going into an alliance with a very weak and enfeebled ANC, and might want to play a different strategy. Do you have any comments on that, Frans? And John, feel free to interject as well.
At a certain, of course, it's a risk, and at a certain level, it makes sense. But I think at a deeper level, it makes less sense. In the sort of chess game that this is, getting the EFF to throw in its lot with the ANC might be the quickest way to be rid of both, because the forces that are sinking the ANC will take the EFF with them. And I think that's something the EFF understands. I think the EFF also works only until it governs. And then the whole kind of mythology around it falls apart. So you've seen of late efforts by the EFF to kick out all the mayors that it had elected. It's a strange politics. No one seems to want to run anything. If you get elected as mayor, it's either by subterfuge or you immediately have forced the person to resign. So I think, if the EFF has any real responsibility, it falls apart. But the great thing against the EFF is that there's not a big market for its message, despite very high levels of unemployment, lots of inequality, terrible poverty, all worsening, stagnant, and now reversing real per capita GDP. If you poll it, we got the EFF spot on in this election at just over 10%. And that's in a country where more than half of young people don't have a job. And that's a remarkable thing. And it's a positive thing too, that in a free society, a party with a brilliant marketing as the EFF has, such an enormous potential market, why does it struggle to get over 10% of the vote? The answers have been apparent to us in polling for 2 decades. That the great majority of people in South Africa are really kind of good, decent, trying to hold it together despite everything. And there isn't a market for that radical populism, despite the best efforts of radicals, the left and the right, social media, and I think some of the mainstream media, to convince the country of the opposite. And as long as we continue to see that in polls, that the average sort of person in the street holds very pragmatic, moderate opinions, wants to work with their neighbors across every line of class and race and history and politics and socioeconomics the country has, pretty certain that these hardline radical options won't take off. But if they do, we will have the advanced reading of that in the polls, and yourself and John and so on, I'm sure, will be able to tell CRA clients quite well in advance that something's changed and that there's the market for radical populism is growing.
Thanks for watching. Let's hand over to you, our viewers. What game do you think the EFF will be playing in 2022? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.